everybody. I'm Rebecca from Thieving Otter Farm,
And I'm Leah with Southern Biophiliac Urban Farm.
and we are two Chix Coturnix bringing you the scoop
Not the poo.
on Coturnix quail. So today we're going to do another 2 cents with two chicks, and we wanted to talk about males.
They're super important.
So important. I don't know about you, Leah, but all the time in groups I see people posting, can you tell me which of these are boys? I want to cull them. Like everybody is
Right.
wanting to get rid of their boys super, super fast, like as soon as they can, or setting up sex linked hatches so they know the males immediately at the hatch so they can cull them right away.
Yeah, I see those a lot.
Yeah. And people don't realize, oh my goodness, my that was hilarious. My cord got caught in the table. I can move. Well, that'll be a funny little bit in our show. So anyway, yeah, this is real. Real life here, and on farms things happen all the time. This is just another example of things just happening. Okay,
yeah,
but
good things, bad things, all the things.
all the things. That is hilarious. Okay, now that I am no longer tied to the table, but yeah, I see people all the time that they just can't wait to get rid of their males.
Or they're like, which one should I pick?
Exactly. And they're like doing this at like 2 weeks old. Like, so
Yeah.
I think we need to talk about why it's important to save the males, to wait.
Yes, waiting's important.
So let's talk about why males are so important, because I think that people don't realize how important male selection is. Like, you really need to be careful when selecting your males. So let's talk about that. What are your thoughts on that, Leah?
Well, I mean, you have to think that, the males are carrying a big piece of the puzzle when it comes to breeding good stock.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to take some precedence in what your choices are.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you think about it this way, let's say, I have a cage with 20 hens in it, and I've got 3 males that are mating with those hens. You are potentially, you've got 20 different hens, giving their genetics to, the offspring, but you only have 3 males. You better hope those males are good. Or
They've
if
got
you're
to be the
keeping,
best.
yeah, or if you're keeping smaller groups and just, 1 to 5 or 6, again, every single egg that comes from that group is being fertilized by 1 male, and all the females are different. So you got to choose the right male.
And
You can
it's an important decision that you shouldn't take lightly.
Exactly. You could go sideways so fast if you choose the wrong male. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how we choose and how long we wait. How long do you usually wait before you select your boys?
At least 10 weeks.
Yeah.
Some of them I'll even set aside a little bit longer, but usually at the 10-week mark, I've picked them out.
Yep. Same. I guess we should talk about, like, what are some reasons for waiting that long? Because 10 weeks for some people, they're going to be going, what? I got to feed these extra
and everybody's
birds
crowing
for 10 weeks.
Yes.
So why would we wait that long? Let's talk about that.
That's usually when they've reached like their full potential.
Yeah.
And you want to know what their full potential is going to be to know if you want to pass it on to offspring.
Exactly. And there are some things like the width of the pelvis that you can't see until they're fully mature. And so people are going to be like, well, why do I care about the width of the pelvis on a male? They're not passing eggs. But that the genetics for the width of the pelvis, say that 10 times fast, those genetics are being passed on to offspring and potentially female offspring. So if you're not selecting for a good pelvis in the male, then you're messing up your females later on down the road.
Yep.
So let's see, what are some other things that we could potentially see if we cull too early, like things that could develop.
So another one would be possible behavioral issues.
Yep, exactly.
Because a lot of times those aren't going to come up until those hormones are really kicking.
Yep. So it would it would really stink if you accidentally culled your sweetest boy, your most calm temperamented boy.
And had no idea.
Yep. And then accidentally chose a bully. that would be unfortunate. And then, I also see issues with, especially once those hormones kick in, like over exuberant maters. Those boys
Yes.
that are just wearing those hens out, chasing them around nonstop, not listening to no means no.
Right.
So, and some of them are just like hormones kicked in and they're like, and they settle down after a while. They kind of, realize they're just teenagers. But sometimes
and we all know how teenagers are.
Teenage boys. But sometimes they don't settle down. And sometimes you have an over exuberant mater that just stresses those hens out. So,
and then you're going to wonder where your eggs are.
Exactly. And then there's the flip side of that. There's the lazy mater. There's, that
one
submissive boy.
Job.
That submissive boy that's cowering in the corners, that's scared of the hens, that's getting bullied. You don't want that either. And come to think of it, I actually had a customer that messaged me the other day. Actually, it was a colleague, quail breeder, that was like, "What do you do if the male just doesn't get it? Like, he keeps trying, but keeps like falling off and is not actually, doing the deed." It's like, find another one,
Yeah, have one on backup.
Yep. So those are all some things, that you'd want to watch for. Additionally, like some defects don't show up until later on.
Yep. Especially if you're, say, breeding for weight, you might not notice like joint defects until closer to that 10-week mark. Yeah.
Yep. And, speaking of weight, you also could have birds that are like slow to mature. And if you're looking for a production bird, you want them to put on weight fairly quickly, but not too quickly and then mess up their joints. But you also don't want, one that is, like lagging behind big time, because that's not something you want in a production bird either.
Right. Because when we hit that 10-week mark, that's, if we are planning on culling birds, it's usually the time that we want those meat birds ready.
Yep. So if they haven't made weight and they aren't, fleshed out well at 10 weeks, you don't want them.
Nope.
And then, something else that I see are birds that mature more slowly, like sexually mature more slowly. Have you ever, you're sorting your birds and you're like male, male, female, and you're like, I don't know. What is this? And for me, that's a cull. If I could tell the other ones, if the other ones have already matured enough where I can tell male from female by vent sexing, I don't want those birds that you can't tell at that time.
Same.
Yeah. It just pushes your production later and later if you select those birds.
Yeah. And those ones too, I've always noticed, are the slower to grow, the slower to fill out.
Yep. So you definitely want to, remove those from your breeding stock for sure. So let's talk about other reasons that you might want to keep males around. Like what
accidents happen.
What's that?
I said accidents happen.
Always.
And we know quail don't always like to stay alive.
Exactly. And it never fails. Like you have one good male and you've selected it for your breeding program, and then he does something stupid and offs himself. And then you're just in, a lot of trouble.
Right. Especially if it's like a specific color or a gene that you've been working on and you don't have a backup, yeah.
Yep. You know, a
That's
good
a lot of work.
example, you recently sent me some awesome eggs of a new line that you're working on. And I had a really nice group of hens hatch out enough to make a small breeding group. And I had 3 boys. And I had one boy that was a standout. And I was like, oh, I'm picking you. And then I had 2 other boys that most people would just call right away. You're like, oh, I've got the boy that I need. Don't need these other 2. But I sorted through those 2 boys and I kept one aside because if something happens to that really good one,
Yeah.
I'm in trouble.
Yeah. Big trouble.
Then I'd have to call you up and go, Leah, can you send me some more eggs? And then that's going to put me
Or
like,
take the long route to try to get those genetics back.
right. You know, the other thing is okay, yes, you may be super awesome and send me more eggs, but how long is it going to take me for me to get those eggs, incubate the eggs, grow that bird out? Now my breeding project is,
Months
way
and months
longer.
and months.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So while the other 2 roosters may not have been like as awesome as that first one, it was something that I could have worked with. So, I chose the best, put him in a cage, and he's my insurance policy.
Yes. Insurance is a good thing to have all the time.
Yes, especially with Coturnix quail that die
Yes.
in stupid ways. Oh my goodness, these birds.
Yes. And
Yeah.
then do you have a bachelor pad? I know I do.
Oh yeah. Yeah. What do you do to like, do you have a special setup or do you do anything different with your bachelor pad?
Not anything super special. I'll give them stuff to, try to take their minds off of each other because they like to, go not go after each other in a bad way, but since there's no girls, they
Yeah.
want to try to make sure, double check that nobody else in there is a girl. So.
Yeah, and those hormones are raging. So yeah, they are going to, actively check out all the other options. Yeah, that's a good idea. Putting, some cognitive toys and something else to peck on,
Yeah.
besides each other. Yeah. Um
And then this
what
summer we do like fruits and cucumbers all the time too. And that keeps them busy.
That's awesome. Yep. One of the things that I do if I know I'm going to need to keep boys long term. So like these are my backups, these are my just in case boys, you know, um I will actually kind of darken their cage a little bit. Because if they don't have that 14 to 16 hours of light, it'll kind of kick off their hormones and they won't be as
Rowdy.
excited about each other.
Yes.
So you have less instance in, them, fighting or mating each other and stuff like that.
Yeah, I've never really had issues with them fighting, just more with the mating part.
Yep. Yep. And I guess, that would be a good thing to talk about. A lot of people think that Coturnix quail are like chicken roosters. Like there are some chicken roosters you just can't have together. They're just going to
Yeah.
fight. With Coturnix quail, it's not really like that. They may establish dominance, but they're not like seeking out other roosters to just fight them.
No.
Like I routinely keep 3 roosters in, per cage with a bunch of hens, or
Same.
whatever, multiple roosters in one cage. And they may establish dominance at first. And there may be a little bit of squabbling, and they tend to like to peck at that, like around the eyes and the head. But pretty quickly they figure it out and everything is fine. Is that kind of your experience too?
Yeah, they chill out usually after a few days.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's just good to let people know, like, they're not fighting to the death. Like they're not, for the most part, of course, who knows? You might get a, gangsta quail.
Right. He doesn't want to play by the rules.
Right. But for the most part, they figure it out and they establish their pecking order and everything's fine. And I find that that's the same thing with the bachelor cages. Do you do anything as far as keeping them in a different location in your barn or anything like that?
They're in like the far corner,
Got it.
kind of away from everybody else, where it's not as bright.
Yeah. Yeah, I've done that, and I've also there's been times that I've had them right next to females. I do tend to see that if they are right next to females, that they will, like pace the cage trying to get to
Yeah.
them. So I do try to, give them a little bit more space away from them. But you don't have to like have them in a completely separate building. You don't have to have them far enough away that they can't hear the girls or can't see them.
Right. They're gonna call out to them no matter where they're at.
Yeah. You can give them a little space, but it doesn't have to be on the other side of your property. So,
Right.
Um,
And then another thing I hear sometimes is like people are having fertility issues.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
maybe you have a male, whichever male you chose, just isn't fertile.
Yep. Exactly. Either physically isn't, is sterile, or maybe, is a little awkward and, falling off the hen or something like that. I've had that happen. I've had, this standout project male, like, oh my goodness, what is this? I have to study it, and then find, oh, wow, I've got him with a number of hens and I'm not getting any fertilized eggs.
Yeah.
So disappointing. Yep, absolutely. Have you ever chosen a male and then find that he's just not producing good offspring?
Yes.
Yeah. You just like, this is not a good, like, he looks great, offspring not. Nope.
Yeah, the combo just doesn't work.
Yeah. So again, good reason to have some backups just in case.
Definitely.
The other thing, back to the bachelor pad, that I find is really important is if you do have any bullies, because occasionally you're going to get somebody that just can't get along with others. I call those.
Yeah.
It's just not something, you don't need them stressing out the others. And if they're a bully in there, they might be a bully in the cage with your hens and stuff. And forget it. Just go ahead and call him.
Yeah. That's a definite call.
So let's talk
what about selecting? Selecting the boys.
You read my mind. Twinsies. Yes. So what's your process for selecting?
I select on multiple things, as I'm sure you do as well.
Yeah.
I usually start with body structure. I like, nice heavy set bones, proper body structure, proper back, that pelvic width. And then from there, I start looking at weight and temperament. How are they acting when I'm holding them? Move on to color. So it's a multitude of things.
Absolutely. Well, let's go through and kind of break these down a little bit. First, what's your process? Do you like have separate cages, like sorting cages and stuff like that? What's your process for it?
I do. I will either use separate cages or I'll use separate holding pens as I'm sorting. And I go through it quickly, but if something stands out to me, I will pull it aside and really look it over.
Yep.
So, and then I have my group of culls, my group of, I'm keeping you, and usually a group of, I'm not sure yet.
Yep. Yes, no, maybe.
Yeah.
Yep. I do the same thing, have 3 pens, and as I'm sorting, I can immediately separate the birds and know, like, these guys deserve a second look. That's my maybe group. And I only choose the maybes. Like, if I don't pull it out and go, oh yes, I really want you, and you're in the maybe group, you're my extras if I don't have enough yeses, and those will go like in the bachelor pen as a backup just in case. So,
yeah.
Okay, so once you pull a bird out to look, to sort, to put in one of those pens, what's your process?
So pause for a second. So what is your process once you've picked out a bird when you're sorting?
Okay, so I pull a bird from, my sorting cage, and right away, like, I'm feeling the bird as I'm pulling it out of the cage. I'm sure you do this as well. Like, I can tell right from the start, like, is this going to be an absolute no?
Yeah.
Or maybe, like, I can't do full yes because I need to look at this bird more closely, but I could feel this bird in my hand and already know, like, yeah, no. On the side. You just, if after you sort just so many birds, you just start getting a feel for what you're looking for.
Yeah, and that makes the process go a lot quicker.
Yep. And sometimes at the end, when I have, let's say I have 10 yeses and I only need 3, I will go in and just feel each bird and see how it feels in my hand. And sometimes that's how I pick them, just like pick them up just a little bit. So feel like,
Right.
and reevaluate that way. From there, I start at the head and I work my way down to the tail. So I'm holding the bird and I look at it right up, straight on profile view, and I'm looking at that beak first, spinning it back and forth and looking to make sure that the beak is the right length, the right shape, that there's not anything wonky, scissor beak or something like that. From there, I go to the eyes. Again, are they too deep set? Are they, too round? Have you ever had a bird with like bulging eyes,
Yes.
like buggy eyes? Not bulging isn't
Yes.
quite right, but like buggy eyes?
They
I've
don't,
seen it
yeah,
like
they don't
twice.
sit right.
Yeah, the eyelids don't close right. Those are things you need to look for. Then I'm looking at the shape of the head, the shape of the neck, the breast, the curve of the back.
That's a big one for me.
Huge. Let's pause there. Let's go to the curve of the spine, because we could talk all day just about the curve of the spine.
Yeah, I mean, when you're evaluating that curve, you have to really feel it.
Yep.
You have to take your hands down the spine and feel it.
Yep.
Because you can't always visually see any kinks or abnormalities without feeling it. Now, sometimes you can visually see it, like from the side, but not always.
Yeah, and sometimes those are the ones that you pull them out of the cage and you're just like, you can go, ooh, no.
Right.
So what are some of these defects that you are looking for in your birds that will put them in the no pile?
If they're too curved, that's a big one. Or if they have too much curvature, just even at the base of the tail.
Yep.
Because those birds their organs are going to be smushed. They're not going to be able to digest food properly. They might not even be able to mate properly.
Yep. Or we're talking about males, but again, we need to remember those genetics are being passed to offspring. And if the female offspring are also, if they have a curved back or a back that's too short, it's going to compress everything and make it harder for them to lay eggs.
Yeah.
Yep. I also see, not just the curve of the back, profile wise, but also like scoliosis.
Yeah. I've seen that a few times too.
Yeah. And then with that, I noticed that sometimes the hip bones are cattywampus.
Yep.
They're like not, so I will actually take 2 fingers and put them on the hip bones and make sure that they're not one side lower than the other or twisted. Because sometimes you see that too.
Yeah, I'll watch the bird walk around.
Yes.
On a flat
That's
surface.
huge.
Yeah.
Yep. And with that, you can see, are they carrying their weight right? Is there, what does their spine look like? You can also kind of look at the legs. One of our friends, Susanna, talks about one of her birds had chopstick legs. Just, every time I was like, oh, that's perfect. Just legs that are too straight, too narrow, just like, it's good to think about too.
Definitely.
And then in the beginning, you talked about the width of the pelvis. Let's touch on that one more time.
Yeah, that's really important in the males and the females because you want to make sure that those eggs are going to be able to pass in the hens.
Yep. And again, while this is a male and he's not laying eggs, he's passing those genetics on to his female offspring. So you want to make sure that the pelvis is nice and wide and that there's not any wonky curves. You don't want the pelvic bones curved inward or like outward or pointy. I mean, like, just check those out really well.
Yeah.
I think that's something that really gets overlooked a lot in male selection.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I do too. I see people really focus either on weight or on color.
Yep.
And not at all the different pieces.
Yep. Let's back up a little bit because you're talking about weight. And one thing I've noticed that people don't really pay attention to when when we're talking about the curve of the spine, they'll find a bird with a big breast that's like super full and they're like, oh, this is a great bird, it's got this giant breast, it's gonna not realizing that that breast feels so big because the spine is too curved and it's pushing those organs up.
Right. Yeah, it's giving like the breast a boost basically.
Yeah. So anytime like one area of the bird is a little off. Sometimes I'll pick up a bird and I'll feel like a very, very prominent breastbone. And a lot of times it's because the backbone is curved, so it's pushing that breastbone forward.
Right.
So if you feel anything that feels a little off or a little exaggerated, then that's something you may want to look at culling. You don't, there's probably a reason for it.
Yes, there usually is.
What about like legs and feet? What are you looking for in those?
So I know you start at the head. I actually start at the legs.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, because I want nice, strong bones. I want them to look, like they're properly holding their weight.
Yes.
That's really big for me. And also when they're hitting that 10 weeks, if they're a jumbo bird, do they look like they're having any joint deformities?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's huge. That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, I start there and then I go to the head.
Okay, fair enough. I look at this, especially with jumbo birds, I'm looking at the size of the feet. Yes. And like making sure that those toes are nice and straight, that they're spread evenly, like you said, that they can carry the weight of that bird really well. If I find a bird with small feet and it's a jumbo line,
it's out. Yeah.
He's out. Yep.
Or if the bone structure, especially like you can tell a lot about the bone structure by just looking at the legs. If they have thin bones, they're out.
Yep. And the shape of the legs, like are they, super spread apart? Are they super narrow together? Are they put, like positioned further back on the body or too forward? Gosh, that you could spend all day looking at legs. I guess it's good to start there. You probably get a lot of culling done early.
I don't know. I figure it, like those legs carry them around their whole life. So that's
very true.
First.
Yeah. And I've seen, a lot of people that talk about how, their jumbo birds, their legs give out and they just lay around, and that's not very helpful.
No.
So
it's hard for you to enjoy your birds too.
Absolutely. And people are pushing for heavier and heavier birds. I see all the time, people are like, oh, I'm breeding for such and such weight and stuff. And it's like, well, if you aren't paying attention to this, the
all
structure,
the bits and pieces. Yes.
Yes. They're going to be ending up like the Cornish cross chickens that have to be culled at, a certain number of weeks or they can't walk.
Right. And that's a sad way to go.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. So what about weight? We were talking about weight. Where is weight in your selection process?
So weight's important. I would say it's probably about midway down my list. Only if I'm working on a jumbo line.
Yep.
Then I'm really looking at weight. But I usually weigh them last. the last thing I'll do.
Yeah. For me, like you said, weight is important when I'm working on a jumbo line or my bantam line, because you can really quickly accidentally select for smaller or bigger. Yeah. So it's important, but I don't know about you. If I have two males and one weighs more than the other, but the smaller male has better conformation and better temperament, I'm going to go with that smaller male.
100% every time. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can get weight later. Like conformation,
exactly.
you can lose that so quickly.
Yep. And sometimes I do weigh in the beginning. I'll admit it, because weight is important. But I will keep those birds that don't make the weight that I'm looking for off to the side to, kind of evaluate after the other ones. Like if I don't find that standout larger male that I really, they're like, oh yeah, you are the one, then I'm going to go back and look at the other ones.
Yeah.
And I'm still going to look at the other ones anyway, because I might miss something really good.
Yes.
But definitely
that's why we have the maybe cage.
Yes. Weight is not everything. And sometimes if you choose males that are overly large, they have a harder time mating.
Yeah. You definitely need a male that is physically fit to do his job.
Yes. Because again, like we're talking about carrying your weight and being able to move and whatever, if you pick a male that gets too large and then has trouble supporting that weight or is just lazy, then you're not doing yourself any favors anyway.
No.
Now, the flip side of that is smaller males tend to be more exuberant maters. So let's say you have a group pen and you have 3 males in it and 2 are really large, and then you like, this little guy, I just need him because I don't have enough males, and you put him in there, guess who's going to do most of the mating?
Yeah.
So you have to be careful that way too.
Right.
So, and then, behavior. Yes. So what are you looking for in behavior as you're going through the process?
So I want a bird that's not super flighty.
Yeah.
I want one that's going to be tolerate being handled. And I know we've touched base in other episodes before, but it doesn't mean that you're handling this bird every single week.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Cause we don't, with the amount of birds that we're working with, don't handle every single bird every week.
Exactly.
And I want to know that, when I pull that bird out, is it going to try to have a heart attack on me? I don't want something like that in my barn.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's a good point. Our birds, when we breed for temperament, because we do have a larger number of birds than some people have, we aren't holding them all the time. So it's not like we're taming the birds and that's why their temperament is good. We are pulling them out of a cage and seeing how their temperament is, like, without any other involvement. Yes. It's like, this is your true temperament. And are you flapping around breaking your own wings? Or are you sitting there curiously looking at you while you have them in the palm of your hand? Like, that's what I'm looking at. And that is something, like, sometimes I will, back to that, like, I've got 10 yes birds in a cage and I'm picking them up. Sometimes if everything else is identical, everything else is perfect, I will pick them up and hold them in my hand. And Are you like scrambling to get away?
Right.
Or are you like curious and looking around and being cute?
That's a big one. That's a big one.
And putting them on the scale. That's the other thing. If they are completely flipping out and I can't get their weight on the scale and they keep flying away, jumping off the scale, running off, and I'm, I'll give they're birds, and they're not the calmest birds, but so I'll put them on there a few times. But if they just will not calm down, they're probably going in that no cage.
Yeah, they're going in no cage fast. I love the ones when you put them on the scale and they look at the scale and they're like, "Oh, what is this?" And then they start pecking at it. Yeah.
Yeah. That is a step in looking for temperament. If they're acting like the scale is lava, I don't need that. Same. Sometimes I'll take them outside and take pictures of them, and it'll be like, move them, move them, move them, move it. Like I can't get them to get the picture, and they keep flying off. And then finally, I'm just like, okay, fine. You want to be a wild bird? Go be a wild bird. Like, I don't want you anyway. So, and I'm also keeping track sometimes of, during this whole sorting process, if I put a bird in the cage, that let's say it made it to the yes or maybe cage, and then I see that it's chasing the other ones around being a turd, he gets moved.
Yeah, that's a no cage.
Like, oh, sorry, buddy. You made it this far, but selection happens again.
Right.
So, yeah. I think it's really, really important to reiterate the fact that we mentioned in the beginning, saying that like males are super important for your breeding. Super important.
Don't be in a rush to get rid of all of them.
Yeah. Your birds are only as good as what you settle for. And if you cull early, you may be missing out on the best bird.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anything else you'd like to add, Leah, before we close up?
I think we covered it all.
I think so too. Well, thank you all for joining us.
You guys have a good night. Make sure you like and subscribe.
Bye.